Welcome. Let's go over some qigong questions. All right, from episode 70. At Samadai. Hello. Hello, Adam. I have a question that I hope you can answer on your video. I'm just starting into learning and practicing qigong and microscopic orbit. I have had lower back surgery where 2 steel rods were implanted, screwing 4 of my vertebrae together successfully. And then 3 and 4 disc operation. The final one where they stuck a mesh in the area, I think, below or maybe over my lower dantian. My question is, would surgeries like these hinder any efforts I put into qigong or qigong? All right, I'm going to answer your questions separately to avoid confusion. First, you're asked about the microscopic orbit, right? That's the one that they circulate the qi up the spine and down the front. So the main purpose of that, depending on the lineage, but most lineages agree in the internal alchemy in Taoism, the idea of that is to clear blockages and to get you a lot of power, specifically for your physical health, or the juice that you're going to use later to merge upward, or called Ming in Chinese. That I don't practice that. It's a very different method as compared to the non-doing tradition, which is where I belong to. They both have a way of increasing your qi power or your energy or your health benefits for your physical body. And of course, they both have many methods. The one you use is circulating the stuff inside your body to clear blockages and make the circulation a lot stronger, and storing the qi in the lower abdomen based on visualization, using your intention to lead your energy, in this case, the orbit, to increase energy. In the non-doing tradition that I practice is 100% non-doing. I don't use my intention. I don't use my visualization. I'm not trying to lead the energy in order to increase the fuel, right? In fact, in the oldest scripture of Taoism, the oldest one they have found, called Nei Yi, which predates internal alchemy by at least 1,000 years, it says, don't try to control it, don't reflect on it, don't try to guide it, don't try to move it. Simply learn how to open up and be tranquil, and the stuff will come to you. That's the premise of non-doing tradition. So for us, in order to increase our power, we rely a lot on standing, also post-training. But not so much the popular way of setting up a container, a buffer zone, so that the qi can develop, like holding on to a ball, hanging the spine, opening up the body and the pores and the bones, sinking our stuff into the ground. That's the basic premise, but eventually what happens is you kind of absorb and release from the vertical plane, heaven and earth qigong. So instead of circulating your own stuff to unblock energy, you kind of get stuff from the outside, a much bigger field, and you get a lot more power, but it also clears blockages. Even though it's like standing is usually looked upon as more powerful, as what I just said, it is not better though, because some people have a very hard time doing nothing. They need something to concentrate on. So the microscopic orbit, even though it's doing, and most people think it's less powerful, it still has its place, right? But I can't really comment more than that because I don't practice it. So the next thing is, with all this surgery, if you put a lot of effort in qigong, would it kind of damper it, right? I can't really answer that because I refuse to talk about anything on this podcast that I haven't experienced before, either me, my teachers, or my students. Because I could be wrong, but I hold the idea that if you talk about things that you haven't directly experienced, it's pretty much BS in my mind, right? So I can't really comment on what you said about that because I never had any students that went through that kind of severe injury with things implanted. I'm sorry. I think the best thing that you can do in that situation is to try a qigong system or study one that really resonates with you. But the most important part is no matter what style of qigong that you have made up your mind to study, try your best to get a teacher. Don't try to learn it on your own, because under the condition that you're talking about with surgery, even without surgery, qigong doesn't really work that good unless the instruction is customized for the individual. It needs to be extremely adaptive. The way we practice depends on the individual and what they're going through. You need somebody that can, you know, chop things off on this end, customize things on that end, tighten the screw over here. It's like a jacket. It has to be tailor-made for you, right? So, and I've seen that violated many times in the decades that I see people do Qigong. They, you know, they don't really have someone to customize things for them. Instead, they try to wing it themselves. Usually the result's not that good and sometimes unsafe. If you study with someone for a long time and you get really good at what you're doing, then you no longer need a teacher. You can make adjustment all by yourself. But that takes a long time. So as you're studying in the beginning, maybe the first 10 years, I highly recommend people get a teacher that specializes in not treating like one size fit all, but he specializes in making customized instruction for every unique individual. Yeah, I try to remind people of that all the time. When I was starting Qigong seriously, I started 30 years ago, but when I started seriously, about 4 hours a day every day, it was about 5 hours a day, right? And the process I went through was almost the same as you in what you're saying. Like, I didn't know how to customize the Qigong. So I thought, hey, if I just like stand, I'm going to get really healthy. The standing did restore all the problems I had at the time with my body, like high blood pressure, allergies, brain fog, losing fine motor skills. I had no energy, I had adrenaline fatigue. I was throwing up all the time. I was getting sick all the time. I was weak all the time. And standing completely cured that. But the only reason why it worked for me, besides the fact that I practiced hours and hours a day and I never skipped a day, was I was very lucky that both my teacher can customize things for my mind and body in a very unique way that works for what I was going through at the moment, right? And I had access to him. I called him all the time. So that's really important. Just a simple thing like, let's say somebody is really hot or very anxious, or let's say they have a fever. If they post-train with their hands too high, it will make it worse because everything's already rising. So if your intent follows your hands, right? So if you post-train too high, that can actually mess you up more. You should actually bring your hands a little lower. Or the reverse, if somebody has cold chills and they're very yin and they're getting brain fog in a way they can't even think and they feel very weak, everything seems like it's kind of draping down like a water drop. Under that condition, if someone does a lot of earth work or post-train too low, it'll actually make their condition worse. So that's a brief example of how such an elementary basic thing like putting your hands high and low can completely affect your day when you're doing Qigong, and why customized instruction is so important. I'll leave you with that, and I hope that helps a bit, but please keep that in mind. Okay, next question is from @emove220. All right, 3 days ago. Thank you, Adam. Yes, you have answered my question. From your comments, it makes sense for me that there is some kind of continuum. Different brain waves, patterns expressing different states, processes, and access by very specific body, mind, activity, posture, able to open the doors. Okay, I'm going to break your question down because it's extremely long, which is fine, but I just want to make sure I do a good job, so I'm going to break it down right now. And then your second question is, Adam, my second question was more specifically about the dreaming part of this continuum associated with the practice of laying. Would you comment about that, please? Okay, and then your next question is, finally, the idea of holistic process going through different phases reminds me of the logical medicine. It's all about the blending, I guess, I can't read that word, of poison and counter poison, the order, the rhythm of activity and rest. For example, and contrary to the most popular prescription I heard from one of my each one teachers, that post-training or jamzhong, static standing, would not be practiced for too long and not even daily, as long standing would not develop cardiac function, plus it would affect somewhat negative blood pressure. Also, because the brain would be receiving less oxygen. Another negative point of long standing is that it would affect our daily body coordination, walking, the interplay of spinal curve as opposed to prolonged erase curve. So standing should be complemented with other protocols. Again, the idea of the continuum you have said, composed of different activities. Wow, that's a lot of questions. I'll try my best to answer it in a way that makes sense. So I'm going to go point by point. Your first thing is there a continuum to open the doors? Yes, I believe I did talk about that a few episodes back. Just for a quick review, in original Taoism, we basically practice the non-human possibilities, or what the Buddha called the four dignities of man, right? So you basically got laying down, meditation or qigong, you got sitting down, meditation and qigong, you got standing qigong, and you got moving qigong. In a modern time, people kind of look at it like a buffet. They pick and choose what they want. Some people only practice sitting meditation. Some people only practice standing. Some people only practice the moving stuff, which I believe is like 99% of Qigong people. If you do a quick search on Qigong in YouTube, 99% of it is moving Qigong, right? So people pick it like a buffet. They only do this or they only do that. Classically, that's not how it is taught. It is actually a holistic process. You weren't given a choice. At least when I was learning, you had to learn the laying down, sitting, standing, and moving. And the reason is because the isolate, individualize purpose and element of each of the four pillars is necessary for a human being from my original classical Taoist point of view. Because laying down practices is based on the premise, besides getting good sleep, solving the idea of insomnia and anxiety while you're sleeping, waking up with too much cortisol, engaging in REM sleep. So that's reason number one. Number two, the Taoists believe you should be training 24 hours a day. So even when you're sleeping, you should be charging your energy. Number three is way more advanced. Maybe we'll talk about it later. It's the idea of the Yi Jing, or learning how to get answers to questions without thinking about it by using your subconscious mind, or the quantum computer, or getting the answer from the universe, which, you know, nowadays in psychology, they talk a lot about that, about using a subconscious mind to answer a question instead of using the cognitive frontal lobe. So we'll talk about that later. So that's laying down Qigong. Standing Qigong is static standing Qigong is mainly used to charge the body, because out of the four pillars, if you think about it, laying down, you're pretty much unconscious and sleeping eventually. Sitting down, prolonged sitting is not good for the physical body, as modern science has proven. So you got moving Qigong left, and then you get prolonged standing. By far, anyone that has tried it, standing Qigong is way more powerful than moving Qigong in terms of raw power, charging raw physical power. So that's why standing should be taught. Sitting Qigong has to be learned, because when you're sitting down, you're way more relaxed than you are when you're standing. And it also allows your brain to enter the brain wave between dreaming and sleeping, where trance happen, or alternative state of consciousness. This is where people start seeing light in meditation, report all over the world, or starting to get euphoric feeling, like enormous amount of bliss. In some cases, dissolving their body and their mind's identity as though they're on psychedelics. These kind of deep brainwave between dreaming and sleeping brainwaves cannot be hit while you're standing for most humans, because it's so close to sleep. And most people cannot sleep standing up, especially when they're squatting, holding a posture in a stance. But it's very easy to fall asleep when you're sitting down. This is why sitting meditation, one of the many reasons why it has to be taught, because it allows the brain to enter that alternate state of consciousness of bliss, which is the direct dissolving and cure of deep problems like trauma, anxiety, depression. So that's why standing is more for your physical health and sitting is more for your spiritual and psychological healing. Moving Qigong should be taught, because the most important thing so far we discussed is the standing and sitting. Moving should be inserted in between it. Unless you insert the moving in between, there will be too much stillness, which is, as science has proven, prolonged stillness without a break is really bad for the human body. So that's why these four pillars have to be learned. So to answer your question directly, yes, there is a continuum between the four. And not only that, the four take turns teaching each other, because each one has a unique ability to grab an attribute that the others can't. When you grab a certain attribute, like entering deep alternate state of consciousness, like I just said, you can throw it into the other three. So you help each other learn faster and faster and faster. The idea of spiral learning instead of linear learning. So the four has to be learned. As for your second question, What about the dreaming part of this continuum? Yeah, I just touched upon it a little bit just now. I did a previous episode on it a while ago. If you go to the playlist, you can probably find it. But the idea in psychology is your frontal lobe gathers data, weight pro and cons to make a decision. That's how most people make a decision, right? But sometimes we know something without knowing how we know it. Is our gut feeling or our intuition? So our subconscious mind can actually find the answer to this. That's why I always use this example. Albert Einstein talked about this a lot, where when he really wanted to solve an equation or a problem, a lot of time he'll hold a ball, lean back on a chair and make himself fall asleep. And right before he falls asleep, he catches the ball before it drops. So he's maintaining his brain between dreaming and sleeping. And he said that when he does that, when he wakes up, somehow he knows the answer but doesn't know why. And he doesn't know why, but now modern science know exactly why, because they're doing this in universities nowadays, where they're teaching people in study groups how to tap into their subconscious mind to find an answer, where all the data is already in there, right? So Qigong takes the same perspective, but also in this degree is the same, but they also have a different point of view, and that is you are literally taking information from the Wi-Fi above, because energy is light, and light is information. That's the idea in Hinduism as the Akasha record, or in Chinese shamanism, the I Ching, or Nicholas Tesla talked about this a lot, where he said he got most of his idea from above, as though the brain's a receiver, which is a pretty popular concept in quantum physics nowadays. And is definitely reported for thousands of years by artists, whether they're dancers or painters or writers. A lot of times they say they have no idea how they created the art. It seems like they're a vessel and they're receiving the muse, right? So these phenomena, whether it's east or west, has happened a lot. In Qigong, we just try to tap into it by using sleeping Qigong, because that one directly does that. And a lot of students will report, hey, I woke up and I found the answer to a question that I've been longing for a long time. And they act pretty surprised. But really, it's been around for thousands of years, especially if you talk to artists. We're just finding a way to tap into it in our tradition. So I hope that helps. And that's it. We're out of time. The other stuff, I'll probably talk about it next episode. All right, guys, if you want to learn how to do this stuff in a customized, adaptive way, we train once a week together in the online program in the Taoist community. We do live stream classes once a week in the laying down, standing, sitting, all the Qigong methods that we should talk about. And we rotate it, right? It's like the seasons, right? And if you miss a live stream class, it's okay. All classes are recorded in the student library. And we also have a student forum. And this is where the forum's important, because it's the place we go to for the customized instruction. Usually when students have a question when they practice, I get them to type it in the form, and I can film an answer for them right away, right? In the next class. So anyways, if you're interested, follow the links below in the website. Have a good night. See you next time.